to Brand Retro. A few weeks ago, I had the pleasure of sitting down with Sarah West, who is the owner and founder of Light Consulting and Coaching. Obviously, yeah, I'm interested, right? It's a business. It's another entrepreneur. It's somebody who's got a story, which, just that's all pluses out of the gate. But the one thing that really stood out about Sarah's story is how she got there and the journey and what it took for her to make the decision to start her own business, and how that decision and that life experience fed into her brand and really kind of created the foundation of what her brand is. So this is a great episode. I think you're going to enjoy her story. So here we go. Welcome, Sarah, to the podcast. If you could just start out by give me a brief description of your company, the brand, and kind of the why behind it all.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me, Mike.
Yeah, no problem.
Light exists to make business and life lighter for people. We do that through financial business consulting, leadership training, and executive coaching. But the word light means so much. It means that light bulb moment that goes off, the light you feel when you're stepping outside, the lighter you feel after a great conversation, and the light of Jesus. When working for my last company, I experienced a lot of third-party advisors from CPAs, insurance agents, attorneys, and bankers, and some that were really great and some that were maybe not so great. But I noticed one thing, that they didn't all consider the holistic client. And those some people that did, and I just really wanted to be that for people, like the one-stop shop. I know enough about everything to be dangerous, but we really just want to come alongside people, partner with people, and make their dreams come true. Our clients aren't the means to the end. They are the end, and they're the reason we exist. God put us here to help others along their journey. So that's really what Light is about, is coming alongside business owners, people in industry, and helping them through this thing called life.
So I think you kind of implied it a little bit, but one of the things that I thought was interesting when we met originally and kind of talked about your brand is that similar to myself, you kind of go into this whole thing knowing that there's questions that the client or the customer is not going to know enough to ask, right? So you kind of bring those topics to the forefront and almost lead them in some regards. Is that correct? And can you tell me a little bit more about how you do that?
Yes, for sure. So because of my vast amount of experience, so banking, insurance, CFO of a large organization, I've got to see a lot of things. And one thing that my mentor at my last organization always taught me, it was, what are the peripheral issues? So if we're trying to solve one problem, that's great, but what are the ramifications of solving that problem if we're only looking at it from one angle? So we always think about, what are the peripheral issues? So if you're trying to control your taxation, for example, is that going to hinder a bank covenant that you are going to be out of? And all the things, and really bringing that all in so that our business owners can make the best decision possible, or we can minimize any exposure that they might have and make just basically the best decision possible for what they're trying to get at, versus just saying, oh, here's the answer to that one question. We're like, let's think this through, and based on what you want, and every business owner is different, we might approach it differently.
Yeah. So basically, if I'm a business or somebody who's looking for consulting more on the financial side, and even as it pertains to the business overall, they would be a primary target for you, right? I mean, they'd be a perfect audience for you to sit down with, meet with, and kind of walk them through kind of those basic steps, but also uncover, maybe some of the pieces they haven't thought of yet. Correct?
Yes, exactly. Yep.
Okay. So one of the things I like to do on this podcast, and obviously it's the whole purpose for the whole branding element to it, is that I always dig into the why and kind of the breakdown of what the brand is all about. And you did explain that. You did explain kind of the customer facing piece.
Mm-hmm.
But where it starts for the brand retro thing for me, the mindset is that there's always this kind of point in the process where you just kind of come to this realization of, A, here's what I'm going to do, and B, here's why I'm going to do it. Here's why I've identified my niche. Here's why I think this is separate. The important part of that is A, identifying, but B, how long can you hold true to that mission, right? Because it's the most purest form of branding, and it's almost the most purest form of business direction that we can take is kind of that center point as to why we started in the first place. So you
Mhm.
told me a little bit about this when we met, and you don't have to go deep into it if you don't feel it. But tell me a little bit about that moment and when you decided, you know what, here's what I'm going to do and here's why I'm going to do it.
I got asked the question last week. 5 years ago, did you know you were going to start a business? And I really appreciated that question because 4 years ago, my life changed. And so 5 years ago, I was going to be the CFO of a Fortune 500 company. And that's what I was going to do. I was going to be the best CFO at the organization I was at the time, and then move on from there and move on and move on and keep building in my career. But on the 4th of July, 2016, my daughter and my nieces were struck by a car when crossing a road on an ATV. And that moment changed our lives, changed my life. And why it changed our lives, well, one, it's just a big tragedy. But coming outside of the cabin to three little bodies laying along the road, one unconscious, and then watching that journey of that Bethany went through to come back to life is not something that I wish upon anyone to see, but also is a gift. It's the gift of her life needs to be celebrated, and walking alongside my sister in her recovery and walking alongside Beth, and that she had to relearn everything. So she was life flighted to Fargo and then life flighted to Regents Gillette childcare in Minneapolis or in St. Paul. And she spent 8 weeks there. She spent 2 weeks in the ICU, sedated the entire time, having multiple surgeries a day, trying to figure out what Beth would be like when she woke up, and praying continuously through that, and just leaning on God to make that miracle happen. I remember sitting. Just Beth was, sedated. My sister and the doctor, the main doctor, was in the room, and Rachel asked the hard question of what is this going to look like? And the doctor said, we have no idea. It's a brain injury, so we have no idea what she's going to wake up like. Leaning into our faith on that whatever God had planned for Beth's life, that we would accept that. And she's basically made a full recovery. She does have some vision impairment and some dental work from her jaw breakage and a little bit of scarring on her leg. But for the most part, she's an amazing little 8-year-old. And but walking through that journey, and then I was just appointed the CFO role 6 months before that. So my first big time job, and I now have this urge that I don't want to be at work, and I love work. Like, I worked a lot and loved it a lot. And my daughter spent more time in the office probably than we did, one-on-one at home. But that changed it. Like, and it wasn't the journey that like changed, like, I don't care about work. What it showed me is, and what it gave me is the opportunity to be vulnerable and to understand that it doesn't all depend on me. So I had a strong team. Had worked on building that. I was in the succession line. So it's not like I just came into that CFO role. I'd been there for 4 years already, leaning on them and being vulnerable with them, saying, I need your help. Because I don't want to be in the office. I want to be in St. Paul with my sister and my niece, and helping them. And whether that's approving wire transfers from Minneapolis or St. Paul versus from the office, that's okay. And they all stepped up. And the amazing thing was they were actually better at their job because I asked them for help. And that aha moment and going through that really kind of changed my mindset as a leader. I don't have to work 80 hours a week. I can work, 50 or whatever, and they'll still do phenomenal things, and really leaning on them. And then also understanding that gives them the opportunity to lift them up. And how this all kind of digs into like starting my own business and the actual name of Light is that we always had hope and faith, and we always saw that there was a light at the end of the tunnel, even if it was just a pinprick. And we want to share that with people. We want to share life with people. And the best way I knew about doing that was my gifts that God's given me to understand financial concepts, being able to read legal contracts and dumb it down. That's a gift that I have, and I'm not doing my maker justice by not utilizing that and not letting other people experience that if our paths should cross. So that's really what kind of drove it. So it was that was 4 years ago. I started Light a little over a year ago in 2019. Took me a little while to be comfortable with the fact that I should be doing something that doesn't guarantee me a paycheck. And also, I felt like I wanted to leave the organization in a place where they, even though they're fine and they would have been fine had I left the next day, whatever, they'll figure it out. They always do. But just really wanted to leave my team and the organization in a healthy place. And so it took a little while to do that. And then I made the leap and decided to go help as many people as are put in my path.
Yeah. So before I ask my next question, I think it's worth just kind of making mention that I think being an entrepreneur yourself, having made that leap, having had something in your life that, shook your foundation enough to want to make a change and to want to make a big change.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you lead with that or not, I think there's mountains of value that come with that for anybody that's going to work with you, because you're going to know what it's like to have jumped off that cliff. You're going to know what it's like to have lived with the fear of, okay, I'm not getting a paycheck next week or whatever it is. I just think there's a lot of value there. And you had mentioned, the light at the end of the tunnel. That's, to me, when you were telling me that story, it's like, yeah, it's a heavy story. It's a story, that you kind of sit back and go, wow, that's amazing. But at the same time, I think you're creating something where you are the light at the end of the tunnel for your clients, because the unknown, the fear, the questions like we've talked about that they don't know enough to ask, to have somebody on the other end of that tunnel and be able to support them and guide them through that, it's huge. So I just want to make mention of that before I go on to my next question, because I think you telling us that story really tells us a lot about, kind of the starting point and the conception point of what Light is all about. So,
Yes. Yeah.
so what's the best piece of advice you've gotten since starting your business, or even prior to starting your business?
Specifically on branding, I can think of a couple different situations. They're both named Kristen. So the gal who did my website and my logo is a dear friend of mine, and she just is so creative, and I would recommend her to everybody except for she works a ton already. So she just like gets people. She gets the consumer, the person who your client is going to be, or whoever's buying your product or service. She gets them, and how they behave, and how to get in front of them, and how to convert a image to a feeling, and all of that stuff that you should know when you're super creative, which is not my strong suit. So surrounding myself with the right people for sure. So she helped come up with my logo and my website, and she just knew my heart. So that made it a ton easier. I remember sitting there working through the different things that she had put together prior to us meeting. And they were at first more like what her interpretation of Light and a financial consulting might look like. But by the end, we came up with the logo that lives today, and it's so perfect. I remember actually I was sitting in a conference and we had met the night before, and she was sending me all these images, not focusing on what she should have been, and me either, because I'm like, yeah, I like this, let's modify this. And then she came with the one that we have the word written in light in a certain font. And I said, well, look at that. The T looks like a cross. This is it. And so she just is visual. She understands that stuff. And then another person that I learned a lot from when it comes to branding is an interior designer here in town in Fargo-Moorhead that I hired to help come up with my design concept for my space. And I had worked with her at the prior organization, and just the little things like sending a branded note card after you meet with somebody and celebrating somebody on their birthday, and the questionnaire that she gave me when she was going to design my space asked me like, what does the room smell like, okay, does that matter? But it does matter. It does matter. And what's the temperature in the room? Like, literally, what's the temperature in the room? Not like, is it stressful or not? It's literally warm. It's light. Like, we have the biggest windows in our space, and that's all intentional. So being the best advice that I've gotten is being intentional with your life, with your brand.
You actually hit the nail on the head. I think it is all about being intentional when it ties back to the story, the person, the authenticity, all those things. It makes it A, telling the story that much easier, but B, it makes it that much easier to just be authentic and be real and you don't have to practice. You don't have to think about a sales persona. You just go to work, be who you are, and everything else just takes care of itself.
Yep.
So tell me a little bit about where they can find more information about Light, and just a little bit more about, kind of what you're looking for as far as customers or ideal clients. Because that's one of the things with this podcast is I want to bring real people on here, real businesses, and, not only get them some hopefully attention, but at the same time, the relevancy of people who are maybe in your shoes or maybe not quite in your shoes yet, but are planning to be. So
Yeah. So they can find us. We have our website, lightconsulting.co.com was purchased, and the buyer will not respond, or the owner will not respond to tell us how much it is. So we're working through that, lightconsulting.co. And then we're on Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn. If you want some inspiration with a little bit of numbers thrown at you, be sure to follow us. We give lots of advice out for free. Why? Because we know what it's like to be on the other side of the table. But if you think like, hey, I need Sarah in my life, or I need light in my life, because the people on my team are phenomenal, and we hire based on core values. So they're very similar in approach, that we're just here to help and we want to make life lighter for you. So reach out, and you can do that either via email, go to our website, anything. But what's our bread and butter, or where we make the most difference is if you have something, whether that's just filing your quarterly 941 and is super confusing for you, or something else, we can help with that. But what we really like to do is become partners with people and come alongside them, so that I'm just a call away. That one song I like to send to people, well, I would sing it, but I'm a horrible singer. So it's just being a call away for our clients. So, I mean, I've already had multiple clients call me today just asking me random questions that we can answer in a quick phone call, versus 5 phone calls that you might have to make if you call your banker, your CPA, your attorney, because those are all specialties. We kind of are the whole gamut. And if it's something more specific, we have those resources too, both CPAs, lawyers, all the things that we can utilize if we need to get deeper. So that's what we want in a client, is somebody who's open and understands that they need help, and we can be that answer to them. And we just want to come alongside. We don't look at our relationships as come in and be done. We want that to be a lifetime relationship. We want to make your dreams come true.
excellent. Well, thank you very much for joining us, and hopefully you'll get some attention from this, and we can share more stories down the road.
Yeah, there is one more thing.
Yes.
We spent the last 2 months putting together this online course called Finance Simplified. And what we do in it is we make the financial concepts that you have in a business. So your P&L, your balance sheet, your cash flow statement, as well as how to use those things to make good business decisions. We've brought that down to a really simple level, not so much that we're calling it like fluffy names, but real terminology. You don't need to know everything. You just need to know enough to be able to make good financial decisions. And then we give you all the tools that you need to make those decisions as well. So Finance Simplified can be found on our website or on our social media platforms. For that link, we are launching the course early September. So that's when it'll be available to the public, is early September. But there's so much goodness in there. I would be remiss to not say you can go out there and learn so much in just a 6 module program.
Yeah, and I'll just add that that's huge because when I started my businesses, like that's just foreign to me. That's not my thing. So luckily I had some people to help me through it as well. But if I could get it all in one place, I sure would go back in time and do it. So
Yes, for
yeah,
sure.
awesome. Well, thank you very much again. We'll be certain to keep an eye on you and have you back on again.
Okay. Thank you, Mike.
All right. Thank you. Thanks again, Sarah, for joining me on the podcast. And I think it's worth mentioning too that where I think this connects back to the brand retro mindset is that companies, businesses, maybe you're working within a marketing department at a larger company, finding resources like consulting and coaching or CyberDogs or whatever it is. It's important to find one that not only has a little bit of awareness and perception as far as where the brand started from and really building off that center point, but also somebody who understands the journey and kind of what goes into getting you where you're at in your business or in your execution of your marketing plan or even the financial side of things as it pertains to Light. So that's one of the things that I look for in a guest when I bring people on the podcast. I'm always looking for somebody who's kind of lived on both sides of the coin. And Sarah's a great example where, like she mentioned, she was not only working for at the time, but being groomed to be the CFO of a Fortune 500 company, and her, kind of need or decision to step away and create something different and to create something special in Light is super cool. So I think it's important, for listeners or anybody looking for, a financial partner, a consulting partner, or, whether it pertains to CyberDogs, a marketing partner, is finding that partner that really connects with your brand, connects with your vision, and that brand retro mindset of, hey, here's where we started, this is the path we're on, and this is the direction our company is going. So just wanted to make mention of that here before we close out. But if you have any other information or looking for information rather on brand retro, check us out at cyberdogsmarketing.com. And again, if you're looking for more information about Sarah and her company, lightconsulting.co. Thanks.